Whilst the rise in Western science, with its focus on empiricism and materialism, has been a huge success in helping us understand the world around us, it also comes with a dark side. Its focus on rationality and its assumption that everything which is real is that which can be observed and measured has resulted in a disenchanted worldview. Spiritual traditions that are often associated with the East are often considered irrational from this perspective, and any claims of reality beyond the physical are taken to be nothing more than a mere fantasy. So in this video I'm going to talk about why this disenchantment that has accompanied materialist science is itself irrational, and on the other hand give a number of reasons why believing in a reality beyond the physical is actually rational. So I'm Georgia, I'm doing a master's degree in consciousness, spirituality and transpersonal psychology, so it is through studying this degree and just through my own interests outside of this degree that I have come up with this list of a number of reasons that basically cast doubt upon this scientific materialist worldview and give reasons to have faith in all these other spiritual conceptions of reality. Number one on the list is the hard problem of consciousness, and this problem basically describes the issue we have in understanding how on earth our brain, which is just this physical lump of matter, can result in consciousness, something which is so fundamentally different in quality to physical matter. There have been a number of attempts to create theories about how exactly the brain produces consciousness, but none of them answer this crucial question. None of them can explain how these physical processes result in our subjective experience. No one has ever managed to answer that question. The most that we've managed to do is find processes in the brain which correlate to different aspects of our conscious experience, but none of them explain how our conscious experience exists in the first place. And why this is so important is because the materialist worldview assumes that everything in our reality is physical, and anything that is non-physical, like our consciousness, is just an epiphenomenon of matter. But that is not actually proven. But when you realise that this is still a complete mystery, it's so significant because it opens up the door for all these other conceptions of reality, which can be so much more in line with all these spiritual worldviews. So, for example, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum to materialism, we have what's called idealism, and this is the idea that consciousness is the fundamental reality, and actually physical reality is derived from consciousness. And there are a whole lot of different theories and paradigms between idealism and materialism. I'm just showing you that as the other extreme, and basically trying to make the point that all these other alternate conceptions of reality that are completely possible because no one has managed to answer the hard problem of consciousness. So my next point kind of stems on from this idea that materialism may not be the paradigm that is actually correct. And this is the fact that we have so many phenomena that cannot be explained under the materialistic paradigm. So, for example, these tend to fall under psychic phenomena and spiritual experiences. So, for example, we have things like telepathy, we have things like NDEs, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. And one route that a lot of traditional scientists go down is to just dismiss these phenomena outright, basically claim that they're not real. And that, to me, is definitely not a satisfactory solution because there is so much research out there looking into these phenomena, so to just dismiss them as not being real just seems really incredible to me. What is really needed is the materialists need to find a way to explain these phenomena under the materialistic paradigm, and that's going to be very difficult because in assuming that consciousness is produced by the brain and limited to the skull, it becomes very difficult to explain phenomena such as telepathy, where it seems like people's consciousness is linking to each other. But when you take another conception of reality, say idealism, or the idea that the brain is like a filter, it just filters consciousness, we're all actually part of this cosmic consciousness, so consciousness is everywhere and we're just tapped into a little bit of it. Suddenly all these other phenomena become a lot easier to explain because consciousness would not be localized in that case. So my third point again links back to these phenomena, and that is that all of these kind of experiences, any kind of spiritual experience, near-death experiences, psychic phenomena such as telepathy, these are all experiences that have been described since the beginning of humans, all across time, all across cultures. And usually one principle in science, when a lot of people agree upon the same thing, that is considered to be a hallmark of objectivity. So why isn't it in this case? In this case it's just dismissed, but if it was anything else within the physical world, that would be considered a hallmark of objectivity. So one specific example of this, I was reading a paper by Farrar. Farrar is an academic in the field of transpersonal psychology. In one of his papers he was talking about this experience he'd had when he was on, I'm not sure if it was ayahuasca, I can't remember exactly, but it was on some kind of psychedelic. And so he had this experience while he was under this vision of these red energetic spider webs. And this is something he'd never seen or heard of before. And after he'd come out of this vision, he then spoke to someone else in the ceremony about it, and they'd had the same thing as well. And he later learned that these red energetic spider webs, whatever they were a common occurrence in these kind of visions. So that, again, to me points at something objective happening here. If multiple people are having the same experiences in a different state of consciousness, doesn't that imply that there might actually be some truth to that? Perhaps they're tapping into a reality that we just don't typically sense in our everyday life. So my fourth point kind of links onto what I was just saying about perhaps tapping into another reality that we can't normally sense. And this is the idea that we can only pick up a small amount of what is reality. So if you take our normal five senses, for example, our eyes, we only pick up a very small amount of what is on the light spectrum. Our eyes do not pick up every single bit of light. Same for our other senses as well. Our five senses do not pick up everything there is to be picked up in physical reality, never mind other reality past physical reality. And I was reading a book by Bernardo Kastrup, who is a very big person within the field of consciousness studies, and he made a very interesting point, and that was, if we take the basic tenets of evolution to be correct, and the idea that we are evolved and geared towards survival, then it makes sense that our senses wouldn't be able to pick up on absolutely everything, because if they could, then that would actually be a hindrance to our survival. We'd be taking in way too much information and not be able to focus down upon the information we actually need. So the theory of evolution would actually, again, indicate that our senses are only picking up what we need to pick up, really, what is geared towards survival. So this is very interesting because, one, it tells us that we're not even picking up on the whole spectrum of experience within physical reality, and beyond that there could be a reality beyond the physical that we're certainly not tuning into, unless you have an altered state of consciousness, for example, maybe through psychedelics or through meditation, whatever you do, and you access these altered states of consciousness, and then you pick up on these extra dimensions, perhaps, whatever it is, these extra layers of reality that we're not normally tapped into. So the fifth point that I want to talk about is the fact that a lot of spiritual traditions have had these teachings for thousands of years, which nowadays some of them are being actually corroborated by science. So I'm sure there's a number of these, but I just want to point out two. So one idea that stemmed from a lot of spiritual traditions is the idea that everything is connected, that we're all one. And that has actually been, I would say, confirmed by science nowadays, by quantum physics in particular, because of the idea of quantum entanglement. So they found that when two particles were joined together, and if those particles were then split, those particles would still be connected on an energetic level. So if you did something to one of the particles, the other one would react in the same way as if the same stimulus was happening to them. And this would be happening instantaneously. So scientists determined that these particles still have some underlying connection, and that's what's called quantum entanglement. And this is really significant because if you think about it, at the moment of the Big Bang, all of matter was once connected. So if we take the theory of quantum entanglement, that means that at some level we are still all connected somehow through quantum entanglement. And then another idea that's common to a lot of spiritual traditions is the idea of tuning into your heart, trusting the intuition of your heart, as if the heart itself has this kind of knowing. And one very interesting finding that seems to corroborate that is that they found that in the heart there are cells that are called sensory neurites, and these are brain-like cells, but they're in the heart. So this kind of indicates that the heart does, in some sense, know itself. So that was another finding that I found absolutely fascinating, and it's just amazing that these kind of modern scientific findings are kind of confirming what some spiritual traditions have been saying for thousands of years. So to me, these findings are just one of many reasons to listen to the wisdom of spiritual traditions. So the final thing I want to talk about is a finding that was made by Greg Braden, and it is just one of the most miraculous things I think I've ever come across. So Greg Braden, he researches a lot of spiritual traditions and the links between those and science, and when he was looking into spiritual traditions, he was finding that a lot of them would say, find the answers within. And he thought, what if that meant literally look within the body to find the answers? So he did this himself, and he figured out something astonishing about DNA. So our DNA is made up of different elements such as carbon, and as we will know from chemistry, each element has an atomic number. And what also has numbers is ancient alphabets. So take Hebrew, for example, each letter has a number equivalent. So what Greg did was he took the numbers, which are the equivalents of the atomic numbers of the elements that make up DNA, and he translated them into these ancient languages, one being Hebrew. And what he found was incredible. Once he translated this into Hebrew, what the first line of everyone's DNA says is, God eternal within the body. So our DNA literally says that God is within the body. And the chances of that happening at random are so minute, so it just begs the question of, is it intentional that our DNA says that? Was that put there? Is there a reason for that? So that's just something to think about, which I think is absolutely incredible. And another thing that links to that I just want to briefly touch on is the Anthropic Principle. And the Anthropic Principle is all about how at the moment of the Big Bang, all of the properties of the universe were right to give rise to life. And again, if any of those properties had been a tiny bit different, then we wouldn't have life in the universe. And again, because of the small chance of that happening, it begs the question of, was there some intentionality behind that? Did someone or something engineer the properties of the universe so that it could give rise to life? So that's a question that a lot of scientists have grappled with, and one answer to that some scientists have given is the idea of the multiverse. They assume that the only reason the conditions are right is because there are an infinite number of universes and we just happen to be in the one that had the right properties to give rise to life. Now that may be true, but it also may be true that there is some intentionality behind the universe, whether that be God or something like, in my opinion, I think it's probably something like consciousness being fundamental. Whatever it is, there is definitely space for some more spiritual understanding of how the universe came into being. So that is everything that I have to talk about in this video. I hope this video was maybe inspiring and gave you some good things to think about, and helps you have some faith in the fact that this physical reality may not be all that there is. There really may be things beyond this physical reality, and believing that that is the case is far from irrational. It's actually completely rational, based on as much as we currently know about our universe. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again next time.